Right. Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, my friends. Good afternoon. It is absolutely wonderful to be here with you in this hotel, which, as far as I can remember, I opened myself, like many hotels in London, 10 years ago on the express understanding that it should have a room large enough to hold events on the sheer scale of the Conservative Friends of Israel. What an extraordinary... And it's great to be here with so many friends to celebrate Hanukkah, the festival of lights and miracles. And I'm honoured and delighted that we're joined by the Chief Rabbi Ephraim Mervis. Fantastic to see you, Chief Rabbi. And Ephraim, I think you were probably there all those years ago when I was hoisted aloft to light the menorah in Trafalgar Square. You may recall this, with a kind of blowtorch they gave me, a no harness, and the wind howled, and my cherry picker, which was about 40 feet up, swayed from side to side, and frankly, it was a miracle that I survived. I'm also glad that we're joined by my old friend Yair Lapid and Foreign Secretary Lapid, Foreign Minister Lapid. I think back, you were kind enough not to mention this, but I think back to that raucous evening many years ago where we were joined by a young whippersnapper called George Osborne, who I see over there. A raucous evening in Tel Aviv when I think we danced on the tables and all sorts of things took place. And in spite of the warnings I have had from time to time over the years that Mossad still possesses the compromat, it's a joke, by the way, I think. It is a miracle that those photographs have never appeared, unless Mossad is keeping them for some long-term strategic purpose. And quite frankly, there's another miracle that we all celebrate today. Something as amazing as the victory of the Maccabees, the great Scottish tribe. The victory of the Maccabees. He didn't realize there were Scottish taxi drivers. Antiochus when he was defeated. The victory of the Maccabees over Antiochus, even more extraordinary than that. And that is the reason we're all able to meet here today in these circumstances, the power of vaccination, the power of the vaccines. And dear conservative friends of Israel, is it not extraordinary that it should be the two populations of Britain and Israel, both fiercely independent-minded lovers of liberty, as Yair has just said, free nations reluctant to be told what to do, and yet it is we, our two populations, that have been the most dynamic and enthusiastic about getting our jabs. We've queued up to do it. When we in the UK were second to Israel in the first great vaccination campaign, we're second now in the race to get boosted, and we're now boosting that booster campaign so that the needles go in so fast as to resemble a vast automated sewing machine stitching a great quilt of protection around our populations. And we don't, of course, we must deal with Omicron. We must deal with Omicron, and we don't yet have all the answers. But we do know this: that if you are boosted, are you boosted, by the way? Hands up who's boosted. My goodness. I'm not. I'm having to wait till Thursday. But anyway, we do know that if you are boosted, your response to this variant is likely to be strong. And that is the most important thing. And I just want to pause for a second and reflect on that phenomenon that has brought our countries, Israel and the UK, together. That rationalism and joint belief in vaccination. Why is it that we've had that response? And is it because our governments are in regular contact and share advice? Possibly. Is it because we both have wonderful and trusted and hard-working healthcare systems? Yes, I think it is. But I also think it's something else. I think it's a tradition in both of our countries of respect and understanding for science and for technology and the miracles that science can perform. Look at Britain, look at Israel. More Nobel Prizes per capita in both our countries than virtually anywhere else in the world. Look at... Look at the tech startups in both our countries, blooming like a thousand flowers. And that's why I'm so pleased that today we're building on this joint lead as two science superpowers. And Foreign Minister Lapid, we're starting a new Britain-Israel partnership fund focused on scientific research. And I hope to see you all at the new UK-Israel Innovation Summit that Prime Minister Bennett and I have agreed will take place in London next March. But there's a more fundamental question. Beneath that question about our shared attitudes to science and to progress, there's a more fundamental question that what kind of countries produce these breakthroughs and what kind of countries innovate? And the evidence is overwhelming. It's liberal values, it's democracy, it's the freedom to think and to create, all bound up with a spirit of enterprise and healthy competition. And that is what is so incredible about Israel, as it's incredible about Britain. I will never forget going to Israel for the first time, I think, when I was only 18. And I have to confess to my fellow kibbutzniks, I was slightly dubious about the socialist precepts. It did not seem to me to be an economic system that was likely to be successful. I was put in. They put me in washing. I loved it, but they put me in washing up for 2 weeks, and I just, I wasn't certain that socialism was going to work on this basis. But what I did see in Israel, which by the way was at that time the only incontestably democratic country in the Middle East. I saw what an incredible place it was. And so all my life I have been a defender and a supporter of Israel. And I'm very proud that the government which I lead is also a staunch defender and supporter of Israel. And as I discussed with President Herzog on his visit to London last week, it is a relationship that is getting stronger the whole time. This very morning, we've agreed a joint memorandum of understanding between our two great nations, just signed by Foreign Minister Lapid and the Foreign Secretary. And this roadmap will deepen and expand cooperation on joint priorities such as security, science, tech, and R&D. We're proud and honoured that more than 10,000 businesses in the UK are trading with Israel to the tune of £4.6 billion, from the Rolls-Royce engines that power El Al, I think I got that right, that was certainly the case when I was last in Israel, to the recent surge in exports of Scotch, nobody's contradicting it anyway, the recent surge in exports of Scotch whisky, and looking at it the other way around, as I discover just from today and from SIPI, 1 in 6. Can you believe this? I'm not sure I can believe this, but I'm going to tell you it anyway. 1 in 6 of the medicines in this country comes from Israel. Is that not a totally astonishing thing? But we can and we must do more. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to announce to you today that we will begin work on an enhanced and improved Israel-UK free trade agreement at the start of next year. And I believe that trade and economic development and improvements in shared infrastructure will be indispensable and are indispensable to the future of the whole region that matters so much to the world and will help to deliver a better and brighter future than the recent past. And I'm inspired by the recent deal between Israel and Jordan. Did you see what they did on clean water and clean energy? Absolutely fantastic thing. And I believe that the Abraham Accords are a historic moment for Israel, the UAE and Bahrain, and the beginning of a new chapter for the region. And it's with that progress being made that we must be ever more vigilant in the fight against terrorism, a fight which has led us, as has already been mentioned, to proscribe Hamas in its entirety once and for all. And it is for the sake of peace that the UK supports Israel's right to defend itself with no equivocation, including from hostile states like Iran. And along with our European and American friends, we will continue to do everything we can to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. And as talks resume in Vienna, we hope that diplomacy can work. But while the nuclear issue is the most urgent, Iran's overall behavior has to change. The attacks at sea, the support for terrorism, the destabilization of the region all form part of the same pattern. And if you can count on my support and our support for Israel, you can certainly count on our support, this government's support, in the struggle against anti-Semitism abroad, with our opposition to the Durban 4 conference, and our fight against anti-Semitism at home, where tragically, in my view, the 1,000-year-old spores of that virus have continued to incubate beneath the floorboards of our country. And I deplore the treatment of Israel's great ambassador, Tzipi Hotovely, that she faced outside one of our universities, that she faced, Tzipi. I abominate the know-nothing, anti-historical abuse that is directed at Jewish people online and in some university campuses. And that's why we've brought forward our bill on academic freedom, and I'm pleased that more and more far-sighted universities are now adopting the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, first adopted by this country and announced actually at this lunch 5 years ago. It's also why we have legislation coming that will stop public bodies pursuing BDS campaigns against Israel. And I will always be proud of the many things this government has done in the last, just in the last 2 years. Getting Brexit done, not universally popular, but a fantastic thing to do. In fact, getting the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe, the fastest booster rollout as well. Finally fixing social care after it had been neglected by governments for decades, delivering a new alliance between the UK, the United States and Australia. Yes, AUKUS, mais oui. A fantastic thing for the world. And of course, COP26, leading the world. COP26 in Glasgow. I don't know whether you saw this thing. It was absolutely astonishing. Leading the world to power past coal. And frankly, if that summit, if that agreement, provisional though it is, but if it had been achieved by any other government, it would have led the BBC to demand the instant canonization of Alok Sharma. It was a quite wonderful thing. But the thing I'm most proud of all, of course, is that so far, thanks to that election victory, we have protected this country against the weevil infestation of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. I know we kept Corbyn out and we sent the corduroid communist cosmonaut into space where he belongs. You can still hear the gnawing of those weevils in the timbers of that Labour Party. And I'm afraid some of the prejudices are still sadly the same. And the people who would take power are still part of the same movement. In many cases, sadly, still the same people who say that they count Hamas and Hezbollah as their friends. And that's why we conservative friends of Israel have got to keep going. That's why we've got to keep the fight up. And I thank you, finally. I thank conservative friends of Israel for all you've done over the last few years, for taking me to Tel Aviv. I think I must have been the beneficiary of one of the, I think I probably was. And not to go to kibbutz, obviously, but that must have been why we were dancing on the tables. Thank you for that. Thank and even if the memories are hazy. Thank you, CFI, for everything you do to take forward the friendship and partnership between our countries. And in this season of light and miracles, let us continue to hope that with Israel and the UK working together as science superpowers, united in values, our shared discoveries and breakthroughs and efforts will offer protection not just to our two countries, but to the entire world. And when future plagues or troubles afflict humanity, I hope that the angel of death will pass over not just our two countries, but the whole world, and that we can go forward to a new age of peace and prosperity. Thank you all, Conservative friends of Europe. Thank you for everything that you do. And I want you to know I will continue to offer you my wholehearted solidarity and support. Thank you all.